And I think that if you can spread a little bit of love and compassion, kindness, and make life a little bit easier for everybody else, I think that it's just healthy for the universe.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate Bryan, and I'm the host of the One Girl Revolution podcast and founder of our nonprofit, One Girl Revolution. One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform, a podcast, and a nonprofit dedicated to highlighting the stories of inspiring women and girls who are changing the world through their lives. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl, REVO. Check us out on YouTube at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our podcast episodes, videos, social media links, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I am so honored to welcome Stacia McDonough, the founder of Independence for Veterans. Stacia has a beautiful love story that she shares in this episode. Her husband, John, was a veteran, and after he passed away, she felt that she needed to do something to help other veterans. She started out by doing a clothing drive, and that grew and grew and ended up becoming this incredible organization, Independence for Veterans, which helps veterans with literally anything that they need help and support with. There are over 40,000 homeless veterans in our country alone. They sacrificed everything for us. The least we can do is give back to them. And that's exactly what Stacia and Independence for Veterans is doing. You are going to love Stacia, and I'm really excited to share her story and this incredible organization with you. Without further ado, here's Stacia. Stacia, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is such a gift to have you on the podcast today, and I'm so excited to share your story and share about your incredible work with Independence for Veterans. But before we get into that, I would love to know, who is a One Girl Revolution in your life? Who's a woman or girl that's inspired you?
I would have to say there were two. Unfortunately, they're not here anymore. One would have been my Aunt Edith, who raised a family back in the day, went through the Depression, worked at a children's store, walked to the store, walked back, stopped at the market, picked up the food, cooked for everybody, raised a family, honest, sincere, kind, gentle. She was just an angel on this earth. And the same could be said for my grandma B. Exact same story, worked very, very hard, kind to others, kind to strangers. They just had a beautiful, beautiful code of life.
Well, and their legacy lives on through you. I think it's so important for us to remember those who have passed on and to really strive to live out their legacy in our own life. So I love that you shared those two stories. Stacia, I would love to rewind and talk about, I think it's so important for us to share our own stories and talk about our own lives. And I think that a lot of things in our lives lead us to what we're doing now and who we're becoming. So I would love to rewind and talk about your life story, a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just about your life journey, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Of course not. I grew up in it was a little town at the time, Freehold, New Jersey, actually, where Bruce Springsteen is from. And then I was raised in Homedale, New Jersey. And the funny part about that story is he wound up living just a couple doors down after that. I don't know. And I went to school at Monmouth University. I have my degree in English literature. And then I worked, and as you know, then I met my husband, who happened to be my sister's next door neighbor. It was just complete accident. It was fate. My sister had broken up with her boyfriend, and I found her this condo for rent for 1 year in the same development I was living. And she said, well, I don't have time to come look at it. Can you find me something? And I found it for her. And there happened to be a lot of units in this particular community. And I picked this one, and John just happened to live next door. And Kate, when I met him, I knew knew he was the one, I got goosebumps. I don't know why. It was like I was struck by lightning. It was the strangest thing. I've never had that in my life. And, and then just from there, it was, I guess, a love at first sight on my part. And then apparently it was for him too. I just didn't know it at the time. And,
it's amazing to hear those stories. Like Hallmark movies do happen in real life sometimes.
Oh
and I know
my
there's
gosh.
so many people that just they meet the right person and it's the right time. And I know your husband was older than you too, so it probably was a little bit of a shock maybe for him too, thinking like, I don't know if I'm ever going to meet somebody, and then here you come waltzing in.
Kate, I never in a million years thought he was gonna like go for me. I just never, I thought like I'm younger and you know, we just came from different worlds. So I thought there's no way. And so I was like in love with him from afar. And I'm like, okay, he could be your friend. And he's so cool. And I saw he was with everybody, all of his neighbors, my sister, he was just kind to everybody. He would have these barbecues. He knew how to make like Texas barbecue. He would invite the whole neighborhood. He would say, invite your friends, he was just a larger than life. I mean, so generous and kind and altruistic would be the word I would use to describe him. Kind to everybody across the board. And I said, there's no way he's ever gonna like me. And then he said he was going on a business trip. And here comes the Hallmark part of the story. He said, do you mind if I come over for a minute? I need to speak to you. And I thought he was going to ask me, to pick up his mail or something. I'm going on a business trip. So I thought he was going to stop over and say, could you get my mail? Or I'm expecting a package. Can you pick it up? And so he came over, and I remember like it was yesterday, I had like my hair up in a ponytail, these little Daisy Duke shorts on. And I know he was never going to like me. So I didn't even make an effort, put on any lipstick or anything. And he came in and he sat down and he said, listen, there's something I need to speak to you about. And I said, yeah. And like I said, I'm expecting him to say, oh, I have a package coming. Can you pick it up? And he said, I really think the world of you. And I said, oh, that's really sweet. I'm like, I think the world of you too. And then there's dead silence. And he said, no, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to say. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, I'm just going to say this and you don't have to answer. Don't say anything. He said, I'm madly in love with you. I'm going away for a little while on business. Think about it. If you want to just remain friends, that's fine. Just please think about it. And maybe we'll go out to dinner when I come home. I'll call you when I'm on the road. And he called when he was coming home drove all the way to Texas. And he said, well, did you get to think about what I said? And I said, yeah. And of course, you knew my answer, Kate. I was like, my heart was like pounding. I thought it was going to come out of my chest. And I said, I would love to go to dinner with you. And he said, wow. He said, I'm very, very, thank you. You just made me the happiest man on earth. Do you know he drove 36 hours home straight from Texas because he was so excited to see me, and picked up on the way home at a farm stand 3 bunches of gladiolas, banged on my front door, and like just about fell in. He didn't even stop at a hotel. That's crazy.
What a man. I think this is so good for women who are out there who are listening to the podcast, or men too, whoever's listening, that there are amazing people out there. And what a man. Obviously, I think of your husband as an American hero. And we know that American heroes, they sacrifice so much for our country and sacrifice so much of their lives. So of course he's going to act that way when he falls in love, but that is so beautiful. What a hero.
Okay. There's another story. I can email it to you. I just recently found out several years ago, a gentleman had called from Arizona, and he left a message on my machine, and I saved it because it was so sweet. And he sounded a little broken up, and he said, you don't know who I am. My name is Mike, and I was in your husband's unit in Vietnam. So if you could please call me back, I would appreciate it. And I called him back, and he told me the whole story. And he told me my husband saved his life, and my husband never said a word about it. And I was in shock. I was really in shock. And he told me this whole story. I was on the phone with him for a couple of hours. And the stuff that he said, of course, the veterans really hold back. They don't like to talk about it. And he was an amazing man. And he passed away 2 days later. And then his sister called me up to tell me he passed away from California. And you got to remember, I don't even know these people. And she said he was just dying to just say thank you. You know, John wasn't here to say thank you to. So you were the closest thing to him. And he wanted to say thank you. And he passed away peacefully.
Those stories just blow me away. And I think there are so many more. Like you said, I think a lot of veterans don't share their stories. And there's obviously a connection between other veterans or like yourself, you know, the spouses of veterans, that there's a connection there. But what a gift John was to this world, and what an amazing husband. So you guys get married and then live happily together. And then unfortunately, John passed away.
Yes.
And so what happened? I know that the work that you're doing now really sparked out of John's legacy and your pain and suffering. You turned your pain and suffering and heartbreak and brokenness into something beautiful. Can you just talk about that? How did you start doing the work that you're doing after John passed away?
Well, it was a Christmas a few years after he passed away, and several weeks before Christmas. And I was in bed, it was at night, and I was feeling sorry for myself because I missed him and I wouldn't be able to spend the holiday with him. And it's just like I had an epiphany that, wait a minute, he's not here and there's nothing you can do about that. But there are some veterans here that can use your help. Right up the road, 15 minutes away, you can bring them Christmas and spread some Christmas cheer to them because they're stuck in a shelter, and whatever you can do to help them smile, just bring a smile to them for Christmas would be a gift to them and in honor of John's memory. And I told my friend the next day, and she said, how are you going to do that in 3 weeks? There's 85 homeless veterans there. There's no way you're going to be able to come up with 85 gifts. And I said, well, let's reach out. And sure enough, we came up with at least 3 gifts each for each veteran. We hand wrapped them with Christmas paper and hand delivered them to them. And that was 10 Christmases ago. And every year it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, where now we're able to supply 2 homeless shelters. And the whole community is involved. The local churches are involved. The banks are involved collecting items for them. It's really department stores. The Ocean County Mall in New Jersey and Toms River, New Jersey, 2 years ago, prior to COVID, gave us the Christmas tree in the mall just for our cause. So it's like caravans of brand new winter clothing get delivered to them every Christmas. And we kick it off on Veterans Day, November 11th, and run it through, January 7th approximately, but sometimes it runs a little later. Like now we're still delivering new clothing to them. So because there's always new veterans moving in, you could have ex-serviceman or woman move out yesterday and he's okay, and somebody new moves in today and they have nothing, and you got to start all over again.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate. Yeah. And in the US, I think this is really important for people to know. In the US, there are over 40,000 homeless veterans. And that's just in America. I mean, it's shocking to think about. And then you start thinking about mental health issues or other things that veterans are dealing with, losing housing, not having clothing, not having just the everyday items that all of us take for granted, right? Like I can go to Target and buy whatever I want, but veterans are struggling and we need to support them. And so it's so inspiring and so needed what you and Independence for Veterans are doing. So you started this kind of clothing drive. It's gone on for, 10 years, and it just has continued to grow and evolve. And you ended up founding an organization called Independence for Veterans. And now you're able to really amplify the work that you were doing from the beginning, and it's helping grow. How did you get the name for Independence for Veterans? And tell me more about what you guys do.
Well, the name was thought of because my husband was born on the 4th of July.
Oh, I love that.
And also we're trying to give these struggling veterans their independence. So it's twofold.
And how did you decide to that this wasn't going to just be a Christmas drive, that this was you wanted to actually start an organization? What was that moment? Was there like a spark moment that you were like, this is bigger than I originally fathomed, and we really need to build momentum and start an organization?
When well, Kate, I was just volunteering for 15 years, and it was great, and it was a fantastic learning curve. And the organization I worked with, everybody was absolutely wonderful. But you're limited if you're a volunteer. You can only do so much. If you have your own nonprofit, now you can raise money. You can, it opens the door for, collecting funding for other things that they need, which a lot of it is housing, because they're bouncing from shelter to the VA hospital because they're not well. And then they get out of there to another shelter, and then maybe, lease an apartment for a few months, and then it doesn't work out because they can't pay the rent. And then they're bounced back into the shelter, and it's a vicious, ruthless cycle. And they need that stability of a place that's theirs. And so that's why we're focusing on the housing now.
Yeah, so you're still collecting items, you're still doing outreach to these veterans, but your mission continues to grow. And so you're getting into housing. Can you just talk about the work that you're doing with Independence for Veterans now, just the different things, and then where you kind of see things going for Independence for Veterans?
Well, right now we're in the midst of a food drive to supply the food pantry at a local veterans homeless shelter. Easter's coming up, and because of COVID, everybody was focused on the hospital workers and the doctors, and the veterans kind of got forgotten about, and their pantry was a little lean. So we're doing a massive food drive. We dropped off yesterday $3,000 worth of food and clothing to this one local shelter. And we have a local church involved around the corner, Grace Chapel, and 3 banks: Carney Bank, Investors Bank, and PPAC Gladstone Bank, and also Habitat for Humanity. So it's a big community effort, a big push to help these struggling veterans get on their feet. And, this is just the basics, the food and the clothing, which not only is an essential, but they need that also for their morale, Kate. You have new clothes on, when you have new clothes on, you feel better. If you're eating healthy, you feel better. So you're also boosting their morale as well as giving their essentials. And keep you on this podcast all day, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we do. We help them with the resumes if one needs help with a resume, and other things like that. So
You're building community around these veterans. I think that's what's so important, is they don't feel alone. And oftentimes in this world, and we've all felt that, where you just feel so isolated and alone. And I think for veterans, they're getting out of service and they feel alone because maybe some of their friends are still working in active service, or their friends have passed away. And so they don't have community and support. And so that's the most important thing that you're doing, is making them not feel so alone. And like you said, these little things like getting new clothes or haircuts, or I've had a couple of people on the podcast who help those experiencing homelessness in a variety of different places across the US to either provide them with a fresh haircut. I know what it feels like to get we all know what it feels like when you first get your hair cut and you feel great, or getting a new outfit, or even just clean socks, right? Like when you put on fresh,
Exactly.
clean socks, just how that can change your morale and just change your attitude towards life. It's so important.
It's funny you said that, Kate, because, this is my 17th year of doing this, 15 years as a volunteer, 2 years with Independence for Veterans. And so I have the unusual perspective of actually going in and out of the shelters and meeting these ex-servicemen and women and talking with them. I mean, they have my cell phone, my home phone. They call me if they need anything. So it's a very exceptional relationship that I have with them. And so I ask them when I go to the shelters, tell me what you need. I don't want to reach out to the community and get you a bunch of stuff that you don't want or you don't need. And one of the things that they mentioned years ago was haircuts. And so for Christmas and throughout the year, we get them gift cards for, Supercuts or Great Clips or whatever. And they go get a haircut, just like you said, and they feel like $1,000,000.
Right. It's the little things. And we all know what that feels like. And you just are doing such incredible work, and you're so selfless just to make yourself available to all these veterans. I would love to hear a couple of stories. So this podcast is all focused on women's stories, obviously girls' stories, but I know that there are so many people that have been helped through your work, all different ages, all different backgrounds. I would love to hear a couple of stories of people that have been helped by Independence for Veterans.
Well, that's always a work in progress. And I suppose after doing it for 17 years, hopefully there's too many to mention. But I always felt, Kate, if I helped one, I did my job on this earth. There's a few that, you have to tailor when you're doing what Independence for Veterans does, you have to tailor to each veterans' needs. They all have different needs, and they all have different goals. So you have to try to like change hats with every veteran that you're working with. So there's two in particular right now. They're on our website under testimonials, and we have them at the top of our list to get homes for. One did 2 tours in Iraq. Brendan Grohala, his name is Brandon, and the other is Kevin Walsh, who was a Desert Storm veteran. We're working very, very closely with them, and what's nice is they're very friendly together because they were in the shelter together. So there's a very strong bond and a camaraderie between the two. So we got them at the top of our list for housing, and we try to get them anything that they need. Kevin, as a matter of fact, I helped him with an essay, and he won a car. He won a Ford Escape. I had the degree in English literature, so he asked for help with an essay, and Progressive was giving away a couple of cars in the Northeast to homeless veterans. And he said, would you please proofread this for me? And of course I did. And a couple of months later, he called crying into the phone. I couldn't understand a word he said. And then he said, I won the car. And he was able to get a job and get on with his life and go visit his kids. And it was just amazing, just changing a few words and arranging his paragraphs, and that helped him win a car. And I don't even remember how many entries they had, but it was just, to me, I felt very, I don't even know how to describe the word that I was able to actually see the rewards of all the work, that, okay, maybe we're on the right track here.
That's so cool, because I think a lot of times too, we don't necessarily see the fruits of the things that we're doing, right? You might help somebody and never see them again. And I'm sure you've had those stories too, where you help somebody with something, but to actually see those fruits, it probably inspires you to keep doing the work that you're doing. And I think it's also important too, to mention that you just used your own gifts and talents in that moment. He needed help just to proofread something. And that this goes out to everybody who's listening, no matter who you are, no matter what your life looks like right now. We all have something that we can give to people. And sometimes it's the small things. It doesn't necessarily have to be donating money, but you could volunteer. I'm sure that people could reach out to you and say, hey, I'm a writer, or hey, I don't know, that they're good at resume writing. They could reach out to you and you could give them things to do. So this is just, I want to make sure that everybody who's listening, that they think about what their gifts and talents are, and whether it's for Independence for Veterans or some other organization that we've highlighted on the podcast here, we all can do something, and it can be the little things that make the biggest impact.
Most definitely.
Why is your work so important, and why should other people care about veterans?
I think just in general, again, I think that life is very, very short. And I think that if you can spread a little bit of love and compassion, kindness, and make life a little bit easier for everybody else, I think that it's just healthy for the universe, without sounding too zen, but I do believe in that.
So where do you go from here with Independence for Veterans? I know you're going to continue to do all the work that you're doing. It's going to continue to grow and evolve as it has over the past couple of years. You're fundraising for the tiny houses for homeless veterans. What's next?
We are going to continue, like you mentioned, with giving the new clothing, the food, raise money for the housing. And what would be next? The next step would naturally be to try somehow, some way, and I know it's very, very difficult when you get anything political, is to get the government involved somehow, because it's this job, like you mentioned earlier, there's over 40,000 veterans sleeping on our street. That job is way too big for you or I to handle. The government is the only one that is in the position to help them, and they need to really recognize this problem and get more involved with either helping them transition before they leave the service. They could ask these veterans the year before their time is up, their 4 years is up, they could the last year say, okay, are you interested in medical? Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be, and like kind of get them ready to transition, so when they come out, they're not just floundering around. And the next thing is housing. It seems to me that there's low income housing available to everybody but them. And I think, just from my experience, that it's because they don't complain. They're not squeaky wheels. They're very, very humble, and they're the last ones that are going to ask for anything. I mean, I've gone into the shelters, Kate, and if I see a new veteran there, I'll introduce myself and say, if you need anything, and give them my card. And of course, they're a little standoffish at first because I'm a stranger. And I've seen them where they're wearing a coat that has duct tape on the elbow, and I'll say, well, do you need anything? And every single time, after doing this for 17 years, every time they say, no, I'm good. No, thank you. And there's a hole in their shoe. They'll never ask you for anything. And so I'm trying to be their voice, and you're being a tremendous help getting the word out there, because they won't say anything and they won't complain. They're very stoic, and it's part of their training, and some is probably by nature, but they need help desperately.
Check out One Girl Revolution's YouTube channel and hit subscribe for more podcast episodes, short documentaries, and other video content. The Girl Inside features the powerful story of a professor who teaches a life-changing storytelling class to incarcerated women at Cook County Jail. The second documentary from One Girl Revolution is coming soon, so make sure that you're the first to know by subscribing to One Girl Revolution on YouTube. I have such a special place in my heart, and I know you do, and I know that all of our listeners do as well. I have a special place in my heart for those who are often forgotten about and marginalized, and I feel like our veterans are often in the shadows and we don't know their stories. And so I'm so grateful for you sharing these stories and for connecting with our veterans. And I know there's so much that we can all do. I would love to know, what can we all do to support your work?
Well, they could always go to our website, www.independenceforveterans.org. They can donate there. They can email us if, like you said, if they have a special talent that they would like to apply to help this cause. We're more than receptive to folks reaching out to us. And I also want to mention, Kate, and I know you're aware about the 22 plus suicides per day, veteran suicides per day. That's almost one every hour, every day. And it's never mentioned in the media or in the news. And that's just beyond heartbreaking.
So many suffer in silence. And I think that we all have the ability to actually build community around our veterans. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's so important for us to be aware of, but also to do something to make a difference. And so I encourage everybody to look up your organization. They can donate items, I'm sure, but reach out to you. I will post your website and your email address in the show notes so people can easily get in touch with you. For people that are listening that might just want to do something in their own community, or they might know a veteran, what are some things that we can do to emulate your work wherever we live?
They can go to a local VA, or maybe even if they don't have a homeless shelter, a specific veterans homeless shelter in their area, they can go to a local VA, or they have VA nursing homes. And perhaps, with the holidays or Memorial Day, Veterans Day, whenever, they could have maybe make up little gift bags of toiletries, of socks, and put a little card in there for them, just to let them know somebody's thinking about them. Because, especially around those holidays and the Christmas holidays, some people tend to get depressed around the holidays, the winter holidays anyway, and the veterans more so around Memorial Day or Veterans Day. And so to let them know that at least somebody's thinking about them can really brighten their day and change their outlook. And that's a tiny thing to ask for, especially for this, the sacrifices that they've given to us so we could have these countless freedoms. So I can be on this podcast with you. So we can go to, like you said, any store and go buy whatever we want today. And it's thanks to them. It's all thanks to them.
Yeah, there's so many things that we can do. And if you know a veteran who lives in your neighborhood or in your family, make sure that you thank them for their service, but also think of them throughout the year. Sometimes holidays, like you said, can be so difficult for people. We all have experienced that in different ways. We miss our loved ones. We miss community a lot of times, especially me here, being here from Michigan. It gets really snowy and it's hard to see people, but build community around those in your own community and support them and show your love for them, even if it's just writing them a little card. Stacia, I'm so intrigued by everything that you do. I love it so much and I'm so supportive and I can't wait to continue to follow your organization and your work. But I'm so curious to know, if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, what is that root?
Love.
Hmm.
Love for my husband, love and adoration and respect for these veterans, that what they have done for us, we could never repay.
It's so true.
And the community, Kate, I have to thank the community that has been unbelievable. And without getting political, I have to thank Mike Lindell at My Pillow for delivering cases and cases and cases constantly to deliver to these homeless shelters. I mean, just out of kindness. And, we're all in this together, no matter what side you're on. We're in this together to try to help those that are struggling. And I don't care what side of the fence you're on. If you're going to help anybody that's struggling, you have my utmost respect, mad respect. And for my board of directors and and for our veterans.
And this is a big shout out to any companies that are out there. There are so many people that could reach out to you. If a company wants to donate goods, like you mentioned, My Pillow, if they want to donate goods, they should reach out to you because that would be really helpful, I'm sure.
And yes, Kate, would make the world of difference. And what I would like all these folks to know is that we hand deliver everything to the shelters. Myself, I went yesterday, myself and the volunteers, they organize everything, they hand deliver everything. It goes right into the hands of a homeless veteran. So that's a pretty big difference.
That's such a unique thing too, to actually see their faces. I feel like there are different initiatives similar to yours where they just package up boxes and deliver them, and the veterans or whoever are in the shelters, they don't get to see this face to face. They don't get this face to face contact. And so that's really unique what you're doing. I want to ask you, you speak to veterans every single day. What message would you give to all the veterans who are out there, any veterans who might be listening? What would you say to them right now?
I'm not in the position to give them advice because they're a lot. They've gone through so much, but I would want them to hold on. Something really great might happen later. Something really great might happen today. You guys have made it through so much and come so far and sacrificed so much that, for all the bad that you've gone through, there's good in this world as well. So hang on.
And for veterans that might be listening, can they reach out to you if they have a need, or, if someone knows a veteran that might need something?
Yes, we will do the best we can, Kate. We're still kind of small, especially compared to these other organizations. We're still when we opened right when COVID started is pretty much when we launched. So we got knocked down a little bit, but we're doing the best we can, and whatever we can do to help them, are going to do our utmost always.
And there are other organizations too, Code of Vets, which we've had on the podcast here. And so people can look up in their own communities, wherever they are, reach out to an organization. If you're a veteran or a veteran who might need support, there are so many different ways that there are so many different organizations that are supporting our veterans, which is amazing.
Yes. And I'm also a member of Rolling Thunder National, which is a big supporter, I guess, of the veterans. So I was with them before I opened Independence for veterans as well. They do the big POW MIA show in DC every year on Memorial Day. They have the Million Man with the motorcycles.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's
great. So anything to help, I guess, promote, and to me, Kate, they seem like an underdog because they never complain. They don't go to the newspapers. They don't go to the media and say, "Oh, poor me, look at us. We need help." They'll never do that. And so we collectively have to be their voice.
Well, you are such a voice for our veterans. And I know there are so many others in your community that are speaking up and sharing their stories and sharing the stories of others. So I'm so grateful for everything that you're doing. I will be sure, like I said before, to post the link to your website and all the different ways that people can get involved and support your work, donate, obviously, follow your work. So I will be sure to post all of that. Before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. If you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Be yourself and follow your heart. Don't compare yourself. This is the older me speaking. Don't compare yourself to anybody else or anybody that's held up in the media, or especially today with social media. Just be yourself, follow your heart.
Stacia, I am so grateful to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being on and sharing your story and sharing your incredible work. And thank you for all the great work that you do.
Thank you for having me, Kate. It's been a pleasure.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.